All right, so I think we are all ready to start. Don't forget to sign, right, everybody? And then we just start, right? So, we want to go back a moment to chapter 13 that we started off last... Oh, Joanne, good.
Hey, how are you? Does anybody have a black bulb?
I do.
Hey, your lights are on.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right. Put the notice in here.
I don't know the code to get back in, so.
1460.
1460.
1460. Okay, what was left, what did you feel was left from chapter 13? Because we spent a lot of time last time going over something that was left from the time before, so we couldn't quite finish chapter 13. So you shoot first, and then I will bring in the concepts that I want to make sure we don't let go of if they don't show up in the discussion before moving on to chapter 14.
Well, I'd certainly appreciate an explanation of what a bizarre object is.
Good.
It's not registering for me.
All right, very good.
On any intuitive level, anyway. On any intuitive level.
On any intuitive level, all right.
Pardon?
Yes?
What did he say?
Say that out.
Well, I don't really have a feel for what a bizarre object is, and it's just all kind of pretty strange to me, and I was hoping for a discussion of that.
One of the things I read about in that regard in learning from experience was that a bizarre object was a combination of a better element and a thought. I don't know how to understand that, though. Like a beta element is not necessarily bizarre because it's a sensation and a stimulus, but that the bizarre object is when it is combined with thought.
So, I don't know that we've even talked about what beta elements are.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
But what I understood, not that I understood, but what I remember from the reading is that there is something about a fragmentation of the ego that takes place when perception. This is just kind of parroting.
Go ahead.
But there's so things that I don't understand. I've been trying to imagine what it is to attack one's perceptual apparatus. But in any case, when that happens, apparently there is a fragmentation of the ego. The perceptual apparatus is associated with the ego. It's part of the ego, and it's fragmented. And those fragments somehow are what become the bizarre objects. They seem to have a sort of quasi-independent existence within the psyche, and then turn or they seem to be even outside of the psyche, and they begin to turn back and seem to be attacking the psyche.
Right. All right.
Is that?
Well, you're coming close. Yes.
But what makes that bizarre? Or what makes them bizarre?
Well, I would like first to see if anyone wants to add something to...
Well, I have a comment about what Jay said, and it goes back to one of the other things he alluded to, which is when we start defining things like this, I run into all sorts of vocabulary problems. All of a sudden we're using the word psyche. These things are getting expelled from the ego into where? I mean, what the hell are we talking about?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or how can there be a threatening presence of an expelled fragment of the ego?
Okay,
If it's expelled.
let us go back a moment, let us step back a little bit first, and maybe we commented on that last time, but to get the whole picture, right? Why would anybody want to do that? I mean, suppose that we do more or less understand that you would want to attack your own senses. You would want to attack your visual sense, your hearing sense, your ability to understand. Why would anybody want to do that to oneself?
Because what you're seeing, go ahead, no, go ahead, what you're seeing is too painful.
Because what you're seeing is too painful.
Yeah.
Right, did you want to add?
I was just going to say what you're sensing is too horrifying. You can't make sense out of it.
Right.
Reality is too painful.
Reality is too painful, right? Sensing may be too wide of a term. We may refine the term, because sensing could mean any sort of feeling, any sort of thing, right?
Well, that's what
Perception.
I think. Any
Perceiving.
sort of thing that you can sense, if it becomes too traumatic, too terrorizing, you would want to say, I don't want to feel it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it.
All right.
But it's a distinction perhaps made between a conscious perception and an unconscious perception. So that a conscious perceiving of reality is there is a drive to expel or rid oneself of the conscious hatred of a too painful reality. Maybe. Because presumably on an unconscious level something is still being perceived or sensed. But when it becomes too invasive by virtue of being conscious, that's what's wanting to be expelled, I think.
Yes, we are talking of consciousness really, because if we are thinking that what gets attacked is our senses, right? Our ability to register with our eyes, with our ears, our intellect, and so on. We are talking of a conscious level of understanding or of realizing something that you can't bear. Now, when we say psyche, for our purposes we mean the personality. What in your psyche is what you would say I. When you say I can't bear that, in theoretical vocabulary, what you mean is that your psyche, that is you, can't bear that. Or your psychic apparatus, which for the purposes is the same, right? Or
Which is another word for mind.
which is
Right.
another word for mind, and when you say I, you mean your mind. I mean, this is you don't mean your intestines. When you say I, you mean your mind that has a perception of the external world and also a perception of yourself. I mean, you have a perception of your body, you have a perception of what you feel, you have a perception of what you think. All that is I. And ego is just the Latin word for I. It's the same thing. It's the
So
I.
psyche, in this case, equals ego.
It
No.
does, only that psyche focuses on the apparatus, right? Which is more, I would say, a theoretical entelechy or a theoretical construction. But it's a theoretical construction of what the I, the ego, is, right? The psyche implies a lot of things. The psyche implies your ability to understand, your ability to repress part of what you understand. We don't are all conscious of everything. We repress pretty much of our senses or our feelings. We all do that, right? All our defenses belong to what our psyche is able to do. All that we register because we have a psyche, we have an apparatus that is able to register, right? Our consciousness is part of our psyche, our unconscious is part of our psyche, our preconscious is part of our psyche, our language development, our ability to understand, all that is part of our psyche.
I guess then I would ask, what isn't?
What isn't? Well,
I mean, what I'm trying to maybe it's too fine a distinction. I'm just trying to understand.
Well,
Is the body included in the psyche then?
the body is not included in the psyche, but the perception of your body is included in your psyche. This is a function of your psyche to perceive your body schema, for instance, not just your pains. Even if you're not in pain, you have a perception of of your body shape, of your body surface, right? When you go through a door, how is it that you don't hit the walls? Well, you don't hit the walls because you have a perception of your body and how much space your body occupies, and so you know, without having to think too much, how to go through, let's say, a corridor without hitting the walls. Yes, the perception of your body is.
But if I'm
Right.
psychotic and I'm walking through the door and I have a belief that the door is talking to me, or it's
That's right.
penetrating me, or it's poisoning me, then,
Right.
or it's an extension of my body, then I'm in the bizarre world.
Well, when you say psychotic, what you imply is an illness of your psyche, something that in your psyche is not functioning well. And it's not functioning well because it doesn't allow you to orient yourself in the world. You get yourself into trouble with reality, right? You may believe that you can fly, which is a psychotic belief, and you just throw yourself off a deck somewhere and you kill yourself. And you didn't want to kill yourself, you thought that you could fly. Well, that's an alteration of reality. You forgot about the law of gravity. You didn't register that actually you are not a bird, etc. Right? That, yeah, right. Actually, the psychosis or neurosis, the osis, the suffix osis, comes originally from medicine and means inflammation. Any inflammatory process is osis, right? Originally, of course, before psychiatry existed, neurologists thought that one went psychotic because you had an inflammation of your nerves, right? Your nerves got inflamed and then they didn't transmit properly to you your perceptions or whatever. But let us get back for a moment to the conflict. Not all personalities can get to grips with reality or bear reality. And remember that last time, you weren't here, but you will hear it on the recording, we mentioned what Blandonu says, Bion says, that there has to be something in particular in a personality to get into trouble with a psychotic problem. He said 3 or 4 things, didn't he, in the beginning? He said, a hate of reality. What else? You can read it, it's in the book, I think it's in the first page of chapter 13.
Predominance of destructive drive.
Yes, a predominance of destructive drive. Destructive drive is the death instinct, and remember that Bion, following Klein, who followed Freud, were dualistic thinkers. That is, that they took that in each personality and actually in each living creature, from bacteria onwards, there are both life and death instinct, and that is why we live.
Robert, I can't hear you.
Yes, well, we are getting this sound again. And I didn't do anything here, actually. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That every living organism has both death and life instincts. That is why we live, and that is also why we die. Right? We die because we have death instinct, and we live because we also have life instinct. And we live in conflict. It's not that because we are born the death instinct goes away. It only means that the life instinct prevails. But Freud, Klein, Bion, particularly Klein and Bion, posited that the weight or the importance of one or the other instinct in a personality